Wait for the on the air. All right. Call the Plan Commission to order. I will ask staff to take a quick roll call.
Wayne Clark,
Yes.
Kathleen Dagenhart,
Yes.
Brian Frank is excused, Rossi Menka,
Present.
Amanda Nowak is excused, David Roshko is excused, Eric Torkelson,
Present.
Jessica Katzenmeyer, here, and Mayor Devine, here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Item C will be approval of the minutes from our meeting on September 22nd.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Clark, second by Commissioner Torkelson. Any changes to the minutes? If there are none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, the minutes are approved. And we'll move on to item D. And our first item will be ordinance number 2. I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Mayor. So this first item here is for a rezoning of the property at 8530 56 West National Avenue. It's the former Clark Oil Building. Well, it's got the current Clark Oil Building. This has some interesting history, actually. There's a man named Emery Clark, and this was back in the 1930s, and he was a contractor, and he had a client who couldn't pay him on time, and so that client ended up giving him his oil business, which was what we know now today as Clark Oil, and this was the original headquarters for Clark Oil. They had their first gas station over at 60th and Greenfield on the northwest corner where we now have a Taco Bell. So this rezoning is, it's currently zoned as M1 and C2, which is a split zone. You see it's split right down the middle. This causes confusion between developers and planning staff. So the purpose is simply to remove the split zone and keep this as one zone, which would be C2. So the applicant is Bethesda Lutheran. They are interested in developing a multifamily building. At this point, we're in the very early stages and negotiating some of the architecture. I just wanted to take this first step and rezone the property, which is consistent with the future land use plan as well.
I'd move approval.
I just had a question. So Bethesda Lutheran, what is the mission again that they do?
So they are looking to help out individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Okay.
And provide housing for those, but also regular market rate housing as well.
Okay. Yeah.
I do have a question, please.
And the second and discussion, Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If this goes through, will this property come off the tax rolls?
No, though they are a nonprofit, they would still pay taxes on whatever development they put up.
You're certain of that?
Yes, we've confirmed with them.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right. If there's no other discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. And we'll move on to items 3A and 3B.
This next item is for St. Paul's Lutheran Church Playground over at Lincoln and 79th. So St. Paul's is proposing to demolish 3 of the duplexes that they own and install a playground for the kids that are at the school that's attached to the church. This is in the RB2 district, and planning staff believes that the expansion of their space into these properties is basically expanding their religious institution use, which is a special use, which is why they have to apply for one. And they have a public hearing scheduled for November 16th. Just to give you an idea, this is the current playground for the kids at the school. It's basically a stretch of alleyway that has been vacated by the city specifically for this use. And here's some details on the playground. So it would be on 19,000 square feet of land located closest to the church. different surfaces used within the playground is rubberized surface for the playground itself, wood chips under the swings, and blacktop in the alley. The rest around here is all grass. The fence would be set back 5 feet on 79th Street, the alleyway, and per this neighbor's request, 5 feet over here as well. They're also proposing to install some landscaping right here, though the neighbor requested that the landscaping be on the other side of this fence. Here's a look at the playground itself. So these are the products that they would be ordering. So just standard playground equipment. Though this is unique, I didn't know what this was until the mayor pointed it out. It's actually a Gaga ball. So it's a game where you pass the ball or try to hit each other with the ball, and if you get hit, you're out. Thought that was kind of interesting. So St. Paul Lutheran Church did hold their own neighborhood meeting, though there wasn't much notice for the rest of the neighbors in the area, nor for the alders. So the city hosted we hosted our own neighborhood meeting, and 20 people showed up here at City Hall. Everyone, to our surprise, everyone preferred to have the playground closed after school is out, so just close it off to the public. This is both parishioners and neighbors agreed on that. And like I mentioned before, the neighbor to the south wants a 5-foot setback, which everybody is okay with. And 2 neighbors didn't like the sound of children playing, so they were opposed to the project. With that, staff recommends approval, subject to Common Council approval on November 16th.
Wayne?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. This project will take 3 properties off the tax rolls,
That's correct.
and we'll end up with less revenue for the city. We're a city that's starving. If we tune into any of the meetings that are televised, city meetings, we know we have a difficult budget. I don't understand why we want to continue to support things where we lose tax revenue. And maybe the mayor is in a better position to talk about this.
Well, what's before us is the design and not what you're dabbling into is more of a council decision than a plan commission decision. And, as you know, plan commission is dealing with how it looks and the traffic and the lighting and the design of it more than the revenue side of things. So you kind of have to delineate those 2 issues. But that's a legitimate point. But I think that's where those concerns would come out with the Common Council more than the plan commission.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We do have 2 representatives from the project here, at least 2. The president of the church and the principal of the school.
And the pastor.
Are those the only 2 objections to the project you've had so far?
See, Steve, maybe you can refresh my memory, but there were a handful of neighbors, and they had some comments about the playground itself, but those were the 2 most vocal opponents to it.
And the reasoning is just because of the noise of the children?
There were a few other reasons, property maintenance issues of the houses that are existing. That was the main issue.
Okay, thank you.
Eric?
Yes. Was there any discussion with the applicant about perhaps like a lighting plan or any like security cameras to kind of deter, destruction of property?
We did ask about that, but there is no plan for that.
I think the intent is for it to close early, right, Tony? I mean, and maybe people from the school can indicate, but I mean, the idea is where it's going to serve the school kids, and then after the school kids are done for the day, it's closed. It's closed to the public. It's just closed. Yeah.
Right. So maybe neighbors were more worried about the evening neighborhood kids coming and making noise.
Sure. Yeah, I think the intent is to have it fully fenced off or gated so that the public is not. I mean, you'd have to hop a fence, I guess, to come in.
Any other questions? Is there a motion from the Commission?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. This was 3A and 3B, correct?
Correct.
Yes. Any other discussion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed. I'm not opposed to the layout here, but I want to send a message to the Common Council and make sure that they take a hard look at this whole taxable issue.
Sure. You got two of them sitting behind you, so that's a good start. So then the chair votes aye. So
I'm wondering who the other one is.
Oh, there he is.
So that'll be a 5-1 vote with the chair voting aye, so the motion carries.
Okay, duly noted, Wayne.
Thank you. Mr. Roth, thank you.
And then we'll move on now to item 4. Item 4.
Thank you, Mayor. Next item is a proposed zoning of property at 1359 South 84th Street. The property is located just north of what was formerly Auto Analyzers, a repair shop. And you may recall back in April, the 8404 site just south of the highlighted property there came before the Planning Commission for a special use review for a gas convenience store. Within that proposal, they were going to modify the existing Auto Analyzers building for a gas station and convenience store. After some discussion and going to Common Council, that the applicant, Mr. Gary Nagra, who's here with us tonight, decided he would reach out to the next door neighbor to the north and offer to purchase his home, which he has, and he has an accepted offer. I should say an offer to purchase that property, and and that property is actually zoned RB2 residential. So what this is doing is more or less setting the stage for a larger, expanded new project, a special use project for a larger gas station, and due to the expanded area. So the property is zoned residential. The rezoning would convert it to C2, like that of the nearby gas station property. It is supported, so that rezoning change is supported within our 2040 land use plan that we've adopted. Number of the properties, I think the next slide, Tony, shows the actual zoning map and zoning map and the land use plan. So the zoning map's on top. You can see the properties are zoned commercial, basically along Greenfield Avenue, on both sides of Greenfield Avenue. State Fair Park is to the east. Element 84 and Walgreens are kitty corner from this site. But the land use plan, the 2040 land use plan, which is in the lower right corner of the screen here, shows kind of a future guide to rezoning. We foresee maybe a larger node of commercial in the southern 9 properties that you see there between 84th and 85th, just north of Greenfield Avenue. So it is supported within our comp plan. So we are recommending approval of the rezoning. This would have to go before the Common Council on November 16th.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
And if you wish, I mean, if you want more information about what's next, if you want to maybe take this item up also with items 5A and B, you could do that. Or if you're comfortable recommending now, or if you want to hold your recommendation and sort of tether it with, combine it with 5A and B, we could do that, and that way you'd hear and see what the proposal is for the overall expanded project area.
So moved.
I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
So in this case where he wants to purchase the property and then demolish the home, would it be the same type of situation where they wouldn't pay taxes on that property?
So they would. I mean, if Mr. Nagra purchases that home and rezones it or doesn't rezone it, he's the new owner of that property and decides to demolish the house, he's still paying property taxes on the land, minus the building, if the building goes away.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Did we have a second?
Second.
We did have a motion, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, then all in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? That's aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. So we'll move on to items 5A, 5B.
Did I? Something out out of order here.
Sorry.
It's all right. We'll come back to this one. Okay, so 5A and 5B, this is the new, I guess, expanded project area, including the 1359 84th property we talked about with rezoning, and then the 8404 Greenfield Avenue property on the corner of 84th and Greenfield. If combined, I guess if combined, it would be an overall project area about 27,000 square feet, so roughly about a half an acre. The proposal would be to demolish the house, demolish the former auto repair shop and the canopy, and then construct a new gas station. The estimated cost is about $1.65 million. The hours of operation as proposed in the application are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Convenience store will sell general grocery items, food, some food products. They will have a kitchen within this building, so it will also function probably much in the way of what you've probably all experienced at a Quick Trip with warm foods, cold foods, coolers for beverages, and so on. No alcohol sales will take place. That was a hot button issue before the council back in May and spring of this year. So no alcohol sales are proposed per the applicant. The property, again, is zoned C2 neighborhood commercial, and gas stations, convenience stores are considered special uses. So the hearing would take place on the 16th. Just some other pictures. A picture taken of looking to the northwest in the lower part there. And then just some other pictures here of the house that would be, is in question here for rezoning, as well as the gas station to the left, and then another shot of the gas station taken from, looking northeast from Greenfield Avenue. A couple other shots here, but this is behind to the west side of the property. There's a multifamily apartment building to the west, on the west side of the 8404 property. And this is the existing layout with the auto analyzers building, the existing canopy. There are currently a number of driveway access points, I think 2 on Greenfield, 1 on 84th. Really not too much landscaping to speak of currently on that site. It's pretty much just a paved lot with a old gas station canopy and the old repair shop building. What we had approved back in April was this layout, just introducing some landscaping to the property along that west edge that buffers the multifamily, and then some corner treatments, edge treatments along Greenfield and 84th Street. And that was renovating the old auto shop. What's proposed now in October before us is a new building, which would be about a little over 6,200 square feet. It would occupy a lot of that lot, that residential lot, if rezoned, if demolished, if combined with the 8404 property. That building would be situated on the north side of the property. There'd be about 16 parking stalls. Well, we'll get to the number of parking stalls in a minute, but a number of 4 pumps with 2 cars per side, or 8 car staging at the pumps, perimeter landscaping, and there's also some additional landscaping at the entry point off of 84th with a bike rack. There'd be 2 entry points into the building on the south side of the building, and then also another access point on Greenfield Avenue. All of these are going to function in terms of like right turn in, right turn out. The refuse area will also be tucked away on the northwest side of the property. And then there are a number of different landscape species proposed, and these are some of the details of the refuse enclosure on the very bottom right, which shows 4-sided enclosure, gated, brick to match the building. The parking required for this site is really a 1 parking stall for every 300 gross square feet of floor area. So on a 6,200 square foot building, you're looking at 20 parking stalls, and the site will provide about 26 total parking spaces, and that's taking into consideration the parking at the pumps. Otherwise, there's the other parking stalls in front of the building and on the west side of the property. There'll also be a metal fence around the as a backdrop to the a short metal fence as a backdrop to some of the landscaping beds in the site. Looking internally within the building, the new floor plan is going to have your convenience store area. The entry-exit is going to be right off the south side of the building, and then you'll have food displays in the upper right, a cashier in the lower right, an office area. But the public side of things is sort of the darker shaded areas. You have restrooms in the northern part. But otherwise, coolers, a freezer, a kitchen area, those are for sort of the back-of-house operations for staff. Just looking back at what was approved back in April, it was, again, just sort of fixing up the old auto repair shop, different sides of it, brick building, and what's proposed with the new architectural, so this month's proposal for the larger 6,200 square foot building with four-sided architecture. It features a brick veneer around the exterior of the building. We also have a product called Nichiha, which is like an engineered wood product, which will be on the exterior of the building. And that's near the market, where it says market and retail. It's again, sort of like a cementitious engineered wood product. It looks like wood, but it's actually more of a cementitious material that will be on the exterior of the building. So it gives sort of a palette of different materials and look and some interest around all four sides of the building with a metal standing seam roof on the top. There are also storefront windows around, the two sides of the building on the east and the south. All of them are transparent, see-through glass, with the exception of two notes up there closer to the retail portion, number 8, which is a spandrel glass, and that's because of the partition between the two retail spaces on the west side of the building. And the future retailers on the west side of the building are about 800 square feet apiece, and it's unknown what they will be at this point. The canopy has been updated too since April. It was just sort of a flat appearing canopy back in April. What they've come back with for this month is more of a standing seam metal roof canopy to match the building. The signage really hasn't changed since the last approval. The one thing to note in terms of signage is the location on the site. It is at an angle, a 45-degree angle. It is technically within the vision angle. Planning Commission back in April accepted this orientation of sign, and that's fine. And we've done that before with the blessing of the city engineer, and that still stands as being acceptable. So we're recommending approval subject to the conditions in your staff report. Some of the things we're looking for are some landscaping revisions with the city forester per his recommendation on species. A paving and drainage stormwater management plan is going to be important for the site, and then exterior lighting details. There are currently two light poles on the property right now. Those will be, I think, one being removed with the new construction of the building, the other being updated. But I guess we'll want a photometric plan and details of the type of fixtures to ensure it's not going to splay beyond the property limits. The other things we're asking for here are an estimated cost of landscaping, a surety bond in this case we are recommending, and then council's approval would be, or consideration, I guess, would be on November 16th. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, the April plan that the commission approved, why wasn't that acted on?
There were some licensing items that came up before the council. So aside from the special use side of things, there was a licensing discussion, and the council really didn't want for there to be beer sales at the within this gas station. So that kind of stalled the project, and then Mr. Nagar went back to the drawing board and talked with some neighbors that were at the license meeting, and I think broached one of them at least with respect to expansion and purchase of that site.
And since this is a 24/7 operation, have the neighbors been canvassed?
Yeah, there's a notice that goes out to property owners within 200 feet with any special use. So that's the case here. I haven't heard of any objections, but that still could happen prior to the public hearing. So between now and the public hearing date, as we get closer, there could be people that approach the city or the city clerk's office and voice an opinion.
And this certainly looks like a nice facility, but being as large as it is and as many pumps, it seems to me that I'm curious about the city engineer relative to traffic. Has his view changed at all because of the size of this?
No. In fact, we broached that topic again in terms of the access and the number of vehicle trips from a gas station. And we even approached the Wisconsin DOT, and they had no recommendation as far as they were fine with the plan as presented.
And the signage, which is the same.
And
but
the signage, right, as far as, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. Any discussion? Years ago, it seemed like Nishiha was kind of a less preferable exterior. Has that evolved where staff is comfortable with it?
Yeah, one of the big concerns with it was the seams. In fact, when it was first introduced, it was sort of a substitute for brick, and they were trying to, the mortar joints and just the depth of it didn't have the right look at the time. I think they've perfected it some more, and it's been used more recently on the West Living project on the yellow tiles that you see on the corners, the accent features of the building, the common area, and so on. So it's a product that's been used, and I think we're comfortable with it. Yeah, so
Thanks.
Good point, though.
All right. If there's no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. To items 6A, 6B.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Bear with us here while we back this up. All right. So this is item 6A and B. This is brought to us also by Gary Nagra, same group as the gas station at 84th and Greenfield. This proposed location is for 2904 South 84th Street, which is at the southeast corner of 84th and Beloit Road. This is a proposed convenience store and gas station on a currently vacant site. Zone C3, our community commercial district. Automobile convenience stores and gas stations are considered a special use in this district, so this will be a special use and site landscaping architectural plan approval. A neighborhood meeting was held last week on October 21st, and a public hearing is going to be scheduled for November 16th. All right, so just a little background about the site. This site has been vacant for the past 27 years. In the past, it was a gas station around the 1960s, and then it was a real estate office for about 20 years. And since the mid-90s, it's been vacant. The plan is to have 4 gas pumps with 8 spots for vehicles and a 3,900 square foot building. Similar to the 84th and Greenfield project, this would include hot food in a deli, and no alcohol would be sold. Proposed hours of operation are Monday through Saturday, 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. We have received word from Dan Rote that this is maybe an issue, and I talked to Gary, and he's all right with changing it to 10 p.m. Sunday will be 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. as well. So just a little about the floor plan. Pretty similar in terms of the facilities that were had at the 84th and Greenfield site. There would be a convenience store area right here, open to the public. This includes things like a deli counter, and some hot food, coffee counter, things like that, for people to get food that's actually prepared on the site in this kitchen area here. There's also some space for groceries and drinks. Again, no alcohol will be sold. Staff area includes the cashier area here, an office, kitchen, and some storage. Looking broader at the site and landscaping plan, staff has worked pretty closely with Gary and Luis and their team, and they've been very receptive to our recommendations. First, looking at landscaping, a few key elements is that there would be landscaping and fencing, shorter 3-foot metal fencing along this frontage area here on the northwest corner of the site. Along the sites bordering the residential properties, there would be a 6-foot tall kind of composite wood grain fence, and then there would also be arborvitae to provide additional screening. Those would grow to be about 10 to 15 feet tall. So that was a point that came up at our neighborhood meeting, how tall those plants would be. And after further contact with our city forester, we think those plants would grow tall enough to be a good screening between the residential properties and the gas station facility. Let's see. There's some infrastructure changes. Right now, there are multiple driveways accessing the site, which were excessive. The plans include proposals to add some grassing here to match the existing kind of street side landscaping there, and include only one right-in, right-out entrance on each side of the property. This would also include, after some discussion with our engineer, them extending the median here at 84th Street. Currently, as it's constructed, the median doesn't do much to block traffic from turning left here. So our engineer recommended adding this median so that people wouldn't be able to drive out here and go left down 84th Street. And the applicants were receptive to that, and they proposed to extend this median as well. A few other elements include some pedestrian accommodations, adding a little sidewalk here to connect to the 84th Street sidewalk so that people could walk along the street here and then walk through the sidewalk instead of through the parking lot to the convenience store. There'd also be a 4-sided refuse enclosure with brick veneer matching the side of the building and wooden gates, and as well as some bicycle parking. Here's an example.
While you're at that slide, what's over in the right-hand corner?
Right-hand corner right here?
Right, yeah.
This is the proposed new building, which will be, the existing building is kind of central located in the site. That would be demolished, and then they would be building a new one with the appropriate setbacks on the south east corner of the site.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so just to look at the architectural plan, this is going to have pretty similar materials to what we saw at 84th and Greenfield. Oops. Including some brick veneer on the siding and that Nichiha wood grain kind of finish along the entrance area. There'd also be some awnings and a capstone element. There'd be 4-sided architecture here, something we worked on with the applicants, and that would be kind of extending this design across the sides. You'll see that there's windows on the side facing the parking lot as well as the side facing 84th Street. These would be transparent with the exception of these 2 windows here on the far left of the building entrance, which is because that's the area that the coolers would be right in line with, so to shield that from the public. The gas pump canopy, similar design to the last one as well, with this kind of metal roof and the brick veneer here. So ultimately, our staff is going to recommend approval subject to several conditions. First, some revised site plans. Let's see here. Some of these conditions have already been met, including wrapping the facade elements around the 4 sides, the median extension, pedestrian connection, and then we'll just also recommend approval subject to exterior color samples, taller evergreen plantings, which we have discussed with their team, and then paving and drainage, stormwater management details shown on a civil engineering plan. And we will be recommending a surety bond issued for this project. And then again, this is subject to Common Council approval.
Thank you.
Yep.
Questions? Wayne?
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Alderman Road. Alderman, are you satisfied with the 10 p.m. closing?
Oh, yes, now, yes.
Okay. And I think it's great that
It
we have
started out 24 hours when we first got this plan, so.
Well, you've done a good job. It seems to me that having something in place of a vacant lot for the past 27 years is a great stride. I'd move approval.
I'll second.
Alderman Rowe?
Just for discussion.
Yep.
Zach, at that neighborhood meeting, excuse me, you guys had talked about flip-flopping, pulling out the bike rack and moving the dumpster. I can't tell by that drawing if that was...
Oh, yeah.
It was?
That was not changed. No, that's consistent with what was there before.
We will, we'll talk to Mr. Nagra, but that's our fault. We did not follow up with Gary on that one, but we will.
Okay, so you can shift it over to the right a little bit. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, and motion carries. I'll move on to item 7A, 7B.
Oh, thanks, Tony. Items 7A and B are is for a property at 8410 Cleveland Avenue, the vacant office building. A couple of gentlemen here this evening, Mr. Rob Chandler, the owner of the property, Midwest Asset Management, and his designer, Dave Kaz, otherwise known as Kaz. So the property has been located at this for some time, and it was originally started as a one-story building, and then later, as time progressed, it was a doctor's office for the nearby hospital. The doctors added a second floor, and it's somewhat of a patchwork of materials currently. There's one type of brick on the base, and then another when they added the second floor, and yet another something else in the middle. So, but it's vacant. And what Mr. Chandler is bringing forth is to remodel it, to take on the existing building, remodel it, completely renovate it for a community living arrangement, licensed up to 28 beds. And you may recall a few years ago there was another proposal, same owner, for a 3-story community living arrangement. We had a neighborhood meeting on that, and it passed through Planning Commission, made it through Council. The neighbors were looking forward to it, and unfortunately, with some cost overruns and change of contractors, and then a pandemic, it was really difficult to bring that one to market. So they've come back with a little bit scaled back approach, but no less quality. And we'll get into the details of that in a moment here. But the operations will be a 24/7 operation for certified nursing care for the advanced staged dementia, terminally ill persons at this location. There will be security measures in place, and we'll get into that in a moment. But the area is Zone C2, neighborhood commercial, as it sits, and that supports not only multifamily residential but care facilities as a special use. So the Midwest Commercial Funding is the existing property owner, and they are contracting with a group called Health Dimensions Group. They're based. They have a location, managed facility in Mequon with about 100 beds. They do operate other properties throughout the United States, about 35 or so, and manage 1,000 beds or so within their portfolio. Again, some of the existing conditions is a 17,000 square foot vacant office building. There are currently about 45 parking stalls on site. There's like literally no landscaping except for the volunteer growth you see coming up through some of the cracks. And then there is an existing cross access with the property just to the west of the 8410 building, this one right here. Both the auto repair shop at 8440 and this 8410 property do provide access to this middle property from Cleveland Avenue. Otherwise, there is an alleyway that runs between 84th and 85th that provides access to all 3 of these properties along Cleveland. This is the proposed look for the 2-story adaptive reuse for a community living arrangement. There's going to be 22 parking stalls off-site with the new site plan. We'll get into that in a moment. And the cross-access will be maintained. There will be new landscaping areas created and patio areas for the enjoyment of the residents. And then the exterior materials that you're seeing here on the exterior of the building are a stone product at the corner feature facing 84th and Cleveland, and then there will be capping off the very upper course of that Lannon stone would be a precast cut sill material, and that would provide transition into the engineered wood product siding that you see there. That wood product would have it's going to be like again a cementitious type of material, but engineered to look like wood. Probably not unlike some of the flooring products you see in interiors these days, but made for an exterior application. And it'll have a wood grain finish. There'll also be some browse for architectural interest on the second floor as well as on the ground floor. There will be access points from 84th Street as well as from Cleveland Avenue. just the side profile of the building. Part of we'll get into the floor plan in a minute, but there are currently 3 floors within the building which will be reused. The basement area, this is the grade level here, and everything above that is the 2 floors. But that lower level will be used for a kitchen and activity area, and then going up from there, you'll have different floor plans for the resident units and nursing stations. Going the wrong way, sorry. Some exterior elevations of the south elevation and the west elevation. This railing here is protects against falling into a light well, which is up against the building. It provides light, like a window well, a large window well of sorts for the activity area down below. And then this is the east elevation facing 84th Street, and then the the north elevation facing the alley. And then in terms of site planning, the green areas are proposed landscape areas that would be introduced to the property. There are 22 off-street parking stalls, which would include 2 handicapped or ADA stalls. There's going to be a larger concrete patio area on the south and east sides of the building for residents to get outside, enjoy some fresh air, and there would be a refuse area back here along the alley. One of the recommendations by staff is to actually set the refuse area back so that the door swing doesn't encroach into the alleyway. There are 23 parking stalls required for the property, and 22 will be provided on site. The Common Council can modify the parking requirement as part of the special use. In terms of access to the site, it's really not going to change much. There's currently an access point on Cleveland Avenue, which will remain, and then from the alley off of 84th here. And then that cross access to the property to the west will be maintained. Stormwater management, I don't have a grading plan in the presentation here, but they have submitted one for review. There are stormwater inlets on the site here, here, and I think maybe one more. Well, no, I think a total of 3. And one of the recommendations by staff is to actually utilize the southeast landscape bed as somewhat of a rain garden of sorts. Now, maybe that may not be enough to accommodate the full runoff of the overall site, but it could, maybe on a lighter event, work towards offsetting some of it and keeping it on site a little bit longer. And then those 2 inlets that are proposed here could still be used as overflow tubes for heavier rain events. But all of that would need to be evaluated by a civil engineer, which the development team is going to do. The list of different types of landscaping materials. This is a more detailed landscaping plan that's been submitted for the site. The variety of plants range in species, perennials, shrubs, some smaller trees. In the light well, there are actually some plants proposed within that light well area. Again, when you're sitting down in the activity area, the dining area, to look out and actually see something growing is probably therapeutic. So in terms of the overall building area per floor, about 5,740 square feet per floor. And so we'll start in the basement area. You can see, north is to the right here. So this is an alleyway back here, 84th Street's here, and then Cleveland Avenue's out here. So, but down below, subterranean, the kitchen area, an activity area, and dining room, and then you have restroom facilities, and then the back of house areas for staff and mechanical. There are 2 stairwells within the building as well, on the northwest corner and the south side, as well as an elevator in the center part of the building. And then per floor, just going up to the first floor at grade, you've got a total of 11 units, or about 13 residents. Some of these will be doubled up. You've got the unit counts on the lower left there. So 9 one-bedroom units are proposed, and then 2 two-bedroom units on this floor. And then going to the second floor, again, 12 total units, possibly up to 15 residents there. Security will be managed with the alarm systems, and I forget the technical term that they use, but basically if you'll be able to exit the building for emergency reasons, but for security of the patients, there is a a mechanism in place to alert staff if someone decides to elope. So, but we haven't received any objections to date, and I guess we're recommending approval subject to the conditions in your staff report. Basically, just going through these just recommendations from our city forester on the landscaping plan, getting material and color details on the exterior of the building. They were shown for reference on those renderings, and then a schedule for construction being provided, and then just updating the stormwater drainage plan to consider those improvements with stormwater runoff, to perhaps have some of the landscaping areas accept some of the runoff before it goes to the stormwater catch basin, and then shifting the refuse area off the alley a bit. Aside from that, we are recommending a surety bond for this proposal, and it would go before Common Council on November 16th. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Wayne.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Is this a taxable event?
Yes.
It is. Wonderful. It looks great, and it looks like we need such a facility, and it's probably a place that my family would ship me to sooner than later. So I'd move approval.
Thank you, Wayne.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? We'll have to get staff to update Wayne's address when we send our plan commission notices.
We know where you live now.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I say the motion carries. We'll move on to item 8.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 8 is for a 3-family home located at 1518 South 92nd Street. The property owner, Salvador Romo, is here with us today. So this is a 3-unit apartment building that is doing a good job of maxing out how large it can be within our zoning code. So each unit is about 2,100 square feet. 3-bedroom, that should say 2-bath, sorry, with in-unit laundry, rear yard porch, and basement parking. Multifamilies are permitted in RB2 as long as it has its SLA, Site Landscape and Architectural Plan approval. Here's a look at the property. It's quite narrow. And here's a look at the architecture. We've got an angled roof, rear porch, basement garage. The front has an extruding cement board. It used to be flat, but we worked with the architect to pop that out a bit. It has cement board, hardy board, siding, and brick on the first floor that wraps around to the sides. We have an exposed staircase here, so if you're driving north along 92nd, you'll be able to see the front doors of these homes. Taking a look at the site landscaping and parking plan. So, like I said, the project maximizes the allowances in the zoning code as well as the building code. We did find that the original submittal of this site plan, the walls were a little bit too close to the property lines and to the other homes, the neighboring homes, so they had to narrow it up a little bit and also reduce the amount of window openings on the sides. So they can't have more than 15% of window openings. They were able to do that. As far as their landscape plan, it's not included in this diagram, but they are including an ornamental tree, some perennials up front, and then just grass in the back. The parking ramp was at 30% grade, but per engineering standards, we were able to get them to reduce that to a 20% slope. And per parking code, each 3-bedroom unit requires 2.5 stalls, so a total of 8 stalls were required, and they have 8 provided. And this space right here is for vehicles to be able to turn around and head back out. Each of the 3 units has the same floor plan, so as you walk up, we'll start at the front door here. You walk into the living room, which is an open concept, going into the dining room and kitchen space that has a bar right here. If you go down the hallway, you'll get to 2 equally sized bedrooms with their bathroom over here. And then all the way in the back of each unit is the master bedroom with the master bathroom and walk-in closet. And connected to the master bedroom is the rear porch. And with that, staff recommends approval. Thank you.
Does anyone have questions?
We'll approve.
I just had a question. Was there a neighborhood meeting for this project?
No, and since it doesn't require a special use permit, it doesn't require a public hearing, and so we didn't send out a public hearing notice.
And for this type of concept, what are the utilities for this as far as like boilers, water heaters? Is there any special design for that?
They do have a utility plan. I didn't include it, but
So I'm assuming each floor is getting their...
it's all within each unit, so that each unit has its own utilities and laundry, washer, dryer.
Parking looks interesting.
It is, yes. I think it would have been very difficult with the 30% grade, because that's really maxing out the amount of grade that a vehicle can even drive up and down.
I don't think anyone who owns a Denali is going to be...
Right, you would
It's going to
compact cars up here.
Well, I just wonder, is anybody going to try to back in and parallel park to leave in an easier way, which is, I guess, completely doable, but that turnaround section looks pretty snug, so hope they have good bumpers on the walls.
It looks like they do have guardrails surrounding all the walls. Yeah.
So I guess it's pretty challenging, say, if a car is pulling out and the car is pulling in at the same time.
Right, they would have to take turns.
Yeah, but it's only 3 units, so that's probably uncommon, but definitely possible.
Hopefully they won't need to park 8 vehicles in there.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we had a motion to approve. Is there a second? Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Thank you. Move on to item 9.
All right. So item 9 is a site landscaping and architectural plan review for 4th and Long, an existing restaurant which is located at 8911 West National Avenue. The plan is to renovate an existing building for this existing restaurant. This is located in the C2 neighborhood commercial district, and it is a special use. It's an existing special use and has been. Just a little brief history about the site. This location used to be Magoo's until about 2015 when 4th and Long started operating out of the site. They recently added an outdoor dining area, which you can see pictured right here. And the existing hours of operation are displayed here, and they're going to be unchanged. So a bit about the floor plan. So there's going to be some pretty extensive interior renovations happening as part of this project. Mike Lang, who's here, we're going to be spending about $800,000 to $900,000 on this project. They're generally going to be retaining the layout. A few interesting things, though, is that there's going to be some new floor grading on the first floor. This is kind of an interesting building. It's like a bi-level thing, and the floor used to be kind of sloped up in one part, so they're going to be regrading the floor so it's all flat. In the past, you'd have some people standing along the bar here, some people sitting along the bar here because of the slope of the floor. Just kind of an interesting design. So they're going to be redoing that floor grading, and most of the renovations will be really happening in the kitchen area, which is located in the building's basement. Of note as well, there's going to be some new venting systems. Right now, the vent for the kitchen kind of pops out kind of by the window here and is exposed. The plans here are to kind of shield this from view with a fence, which you'll get a better view of in our site plans. So a few notes on the site plan. Most of the money is going to be spent on the inside of the building. There's going to be some changes to the outside, though. Per staff recommendations, they will be removing a non-conforming freestanding sign, which Mike Lang had agreed to remove in the past. There's going to be new fencing here along this corner of the building to screen this new venting system from view, so that the vents will be kind of located here and here, and then they'll aim up instead of out into the parking lot. That also is going to be replacing a former landscaping bed. They're going to slightly extend this outdoor seating area before it kind of ended right here by the entrance, and they're just going to kind of extend that a little bit, so a small change there. And then they also plan to remove this small landscaping bed here, retaining the landscaping that's along the street-facing side. Mike wanted to do this to use this as motorcycle parking in the summer, which will free up more spaces for other patrons using the parking lot here, and then use it for additional snow storage in the winter. And the site has some challenges because it's bordered by on three sides by streets, so they get kind of a lot of snow piling up there in the winter. So that's their plan with that little spot there. Some notes on the architectural plan. Their plan is to replace the existing wood shake siding with new 4-inch vinyl siding. And there's going to be this new fencing, which we see right here in this corner of the site here. They're also going to be replacing windows and adding some new double-hung windows. And then here's a rendering right down here of one of the possible proposed colors, which has not been decided yet. And so getting into our subject to approvals, that is one of them, color of exterior paint. Also having the landscaping species plan approved by our forestry, and an update to the site plan to reflect the applicant's proposal to remove that freestanding sign, which is non-conforming. And so with that, any questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
Thank you. On page 3 of tonight's packet, there's reference, item 1 is required to be satisfied prior to the issuance of building permits associated with the proposed work. What is item 1?
On page 3, you said? Let's see. Item 1 is the revised site landscape and architectural plans. So we just want to have those before the building permit is issued, or permits are issued to do the work.
And this goes on to say that contractors applying for permits should be advised accordingly.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's standard language that we have on every.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Move approval.
I'll second.
All right. Any other discussion on the motion? Some of the best wings in the city, if you haven't been. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. On to item 10.
Item 10. Item 10 is a site landscaping review for currently vacant tavern property at 7534 Beloit Road. It was formerly called One More, and before that you may recognize it as Stir Greg's. So it's currently vacant. However, there is an applicant that has applied for a liquor license, a Class B tavern license at this location back in early September. The Common Council didn't act on that license yet, and instead wanted to refer this matter to the Planning Commission for site landscape and architectural review. And they have that within their authority to do. Taverns, cocktail lounges, and so on are considered permitted uses. A couple of years ago, that was changed to help streamline the process to get people into business. The council changed that to permitted use, however, in the licensing consideration, you can always refer to the Planning Commission a property for site landscape review if they see so fit. The licenses are fairly discretionary. It's not like you must issue a license, so it's kind of like an ask. So the council in this case, in their consideration of this license, wants some certain improvements to this property before they consider moving ahead on the license. So that's why we're here tonight. So our focus is really just the site landscaping review. The colors are a little off here, but what's proposed here is basically at the September 6th meeting, there were some concerns that were relayed to the Common Council that night. One of the big concerns from the neighborhood was a cross-access that's taking place north of the property. And up here, there's a driveway that you come in off of Beloit, and there's an existing drive that crosses a residential property and goes to a city alley. when this was a tavern, that was a big point of concern to the neighborhood. People coming and going to the bar or from the bar, different hours of the day, and disturbing the peace, so to speak, and ruining people's enjoyment of their property. So that was heard loud and clear at the meeting on September 6th, and so with that, in council's referral to the Planning Commission, what Glenn and Melissa Shruby, the applicants, are proposing here is this plan basically to close off that access way across another property, to the alley, and that would be done by installing a refuse enclosure with a 6-foot high fence along the northern part of the property, and then continuing that fence around the building on the west side of the property. There's a dental office to the west. There's a dry cleaner to the northwest, and there's a residential home to the east. The residential home is also being considered by the Glenn and Melissa Shruby for purchase. So if the license is issued by the Common Council or granted by the Common Council, the Shrubys would commence on the real estate transaction for not only the bar property and own and operate the bar property, but they'd also live in the house next door in close proximity to their business. The other parts of the highlights of the plan they submitted here are in there's an existing front lawn area, and then something happened in the transfer here, but this was actually green. These are green spots here. Just imagine these are green. So there's a green landscape area here, a green front lawn, which is existing, and there's a new lawn to replace the asphalt pavement, and along with some retaining walls and landscaping beds here on the west side. And then that other asphalt parking lot that we saw in the previous slide would be replaced with a new concrete paved patio, the fences we mentioned, and they would continue that concrete through a gateway here around the back. This is a mixed-use building, so there is a residential apartment above it. That tenant, they're providing some access to the refuse area here. When they come outside to throw out their garbage, they would be walking out downstairs around the back of the building, and there'd be a small opening here for them to dispose of the refuse. The rest of this area here would be grass or green space. So again, all exposure to that city alley would be cut off. If a patron of the tavern happened to park here and wanted to leave, all in and out would be via this existing curb cut on Beloit Road. And then this is sort of explains the nuts and bolts that our review here tonight is just site landscaping review. The real estate transaction would commence this year if there's favorable decision on the license, and then they'd be the new owners and operators of the bar as well as the house next door. And they've indicated they will block off close access to that alley just to the north of the bar. The initial closure may be something like in line with a boulder or a jersey barrier, but their intent would be then in the spring or the next year, within 1 year, to install the actual fence, a 6-foot high tall wood or composite style fence, along with that landscaping and those retaining decorative retaining walls we had talked about, along with the refuse enclosure. Just for context, this is the tavern property. It's 7534 Beloit Road here, 76th Street here. This is that commercial dry cleaner, the dentist office that we had mentioned, those surrounding properties, and the residential home here. And as you can see here, this is the existing situation. There's a city alley, so everybody in the neighborhood comes down this alley to access their detached garage. But what's been happening in the past with the past couple bars is that patrons can exit or enter from this way. So it's kind of like a back door or front door, however you want to look at it, but it's causing problems. It has caused problems in the neighborhood. And so that would be closed off. And then just another strange configuration of the residential property. But you can see the residential property lines in blue there, and how it sort of wraps around this bar property slightly. And there was some confusion about whether this is a city alley or if it's a commercial, but it is privately owned, and it's on the residential property. So our staff recommendation is for approval of the site landscaping architectural plan. Basically asking for the details of the landscaping materials that they propose within those retained areas, the retaining wall areas. They do propose a patio door on the west elevation, so we'd ask for an elevation along with their building permit plans, which is pretty standard, and then a schedule for completion being provided. They've indicated 1 year. Certainly there would be a blockade created immediately upon occupancy. But then they would come in with the finished details, the more decorative fence, and so on within a year.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, Steve, is the applicant in agreement with all these changes?
Melissa?
Yep.
Thank you. And do you have any sense on if these changes go forth, will the council approve this?
That's up to the council.
I know it's up to the council, but I would suspect you've had some private conversations.
I don't know. I really don't. There's the License and Health Committee did refer the project to us for site review. From a zoning perspective, it's a permitted use. But given the license application that kicked it over to us for review, in review of what the Glenn and Melissa would like to do, I think it's a good plan. It's certainly going to clean up an otherwise somewhat, I don't want to say blighted, but deteriorated property. I guess it's going to be more of a policy decision in terms of license or no license. Do we, the neighborhood has expressed some sentiment about, do we need another bar? Do we need more problems like this? Can it be something else? Can it be another use? There are other uses that could happen within the zoning district, like retail uses. Being zone C3 commercial, it could be an office, it could be a mixed use. You could have a cafe, deli on the ground floor and the residential apartment above. You could tear it all down and put in a contractor shop or auto repair. I mean, there's different things you could do with it. So, I mean, I guess it just depends on what the market wants there, and does that other use fit the zoning?
Are the neighbors, is their message so loud about, do we need another bar? Or is it one or two people?
I forget how many people were at the meeting, but yeah.
There was a petition coming up on our meeting next
people.
Tuesday, which I think had 40+ signatures on it.
Against it?
Against it.
Again, it's not a use question here. It's more of so there is that neighborhood element. What we're charged with doing tonight is not questioning should we have another bar or not. The question before Plan Commission tonight is, do we like this site landscape and architectural plan? The Common Council is going to speak, I guess, for, to their end of their policy end of things.
No, I appreciate our role, and I think we should move ahead and pass this and let the council grapple with its overall responsibilities. But I'm just trying to get a sense of whether this has any chance at all.
Jessica and then Alderman Weigel.
I was also present at the September 6th meeting back on the Common Council. And I want to say that the fact that the owners are willing to make these changes to help better the neighborhood, I think that we should give them a chance with this. And the fact that they're willing to invest in building a home here as well, too, and owning that home, too. And I like the changes, and I would move to approve it.
Thank you.
Second.
Who's the second? Alderman Weigel.
Question on the parking in that now disconnected parking lot. Do you have any stalls laid out? Is there room to make a Y turn or a U-turn in there? What's that going to look like for parking for the patrons?
Yeah, we don't have a parking plan.
So that would be.
There would be no parking for patrons.
That would be no parking for patrons.
There would be like maybe an employee parking area, and that would be about it, because I don't feel like it's a good idea.
What about for the existing tenants? Is there a parking space for them?
That actually, we may end up using that extra driveway that's sort of just sitting out in back that now is no longer a drive, and allow one car parked there.
So you think the tenant would park in the back?
Yes.
And then any cars that might be parked there would be for you living in the house next door? or not?
No, they would be like employees of the bar that are parking, like, I'm sorry, which part are you talking about? The back of the house?
No, the one off of Beloit.
The one off of Beloit would only be an employee. That would be it. There would be no patron parking at all.
Okay. And you'd enforce that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. And so all your patrons are parking on Beloit Road?
Yeah, there's other options. Options are limited, so yeah. I mean, there's not enough area there to turn around.
No, that was my question, because normally if you see a slab of asphalt like that, it's striped for parking, but if it's that narrow, there isn't room to park and get in and out.
There would only be like probably two or three people that could park
And it
forward.
it wouldn't be motorcycle parking?
I mean, no, I really don't feel like if I'm going to have no parking, no patron parking, then I really just should have no patron parking.
Okay.
It'll just be a private parking area and it'll be posted.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions, discussion?
I'm going to withdraw my second.
Okay.
Let somebody else have the second.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a new second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. All right, move on to item 11.
Thank you, Mayor. This next item is the Highway 100 rezoning, which you've all been kept abreast of since, I think, July. Just a refresher, we're updating the zoning for 51 properties along Highway 100 between Greenfield Avenue and Oklahoma Avenue. Generally, for the most part, we're changing a lot of the zoning from M1 and C4 down to C3. This would be consistent with the 2040 comprehensive plan as well as the future land use map that you see to the right. The Highway 100 corridor study also calls for a dynamic range of uses and makes recommendations to remove split zoning, which I'll get into in a second here. So the primary purpose of the rezoning would be to avoid undesirable uses. So for example, stores like, we call them nominal price retail stores, but dollar stores, outdoor car dealerships, check cashing businesses, animal kennels, pawn shops. And here are a few more examples of things that would still be permitted, things like a vet clinic, medical clinic, hotel, just as examples. This would also allow for denser development. So here's a look at some of the building setbacks for the different districts. So in C3, we actually have a higher floor area ratio than C4. So that would allow for 1.5 times the building to maximize one lot. And also the front setback, there is no front setback for C3 as opposed to a 10-foot setback in both M1 and C4. This would also help to remove a lot of the split zone properties that we have mostly just south of Greenfield Avenue. So here's an example of one at the West Dallas Center. It just adds to complexity for redevelopment, or if a business owner wants to sell that property, then they would have to find the right user that would have commercial in the front, perhaps, or manufacturing in the back. So very important to note is that this would create some non-conforming uses with a few properties. So any use that's consistent with M1 and C4, let's use check cashing, for example. Now, and then it becomes a C3 district. That would become a legal non-conforming business. That means that those businesses can still continue to operate, but when that business leaves and 12 months passes, then another check cashing place couldn't go back in there. But if a check cashing place were to come in at month 11, they could still piggyback off of the previous business use. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I understand it.
So I'm just going to show you 4 different maps showing the length of all of the rezonings from Greenfield down to Oklahoma. So There's a cluster here, down here. You see there's another split zone property there, one over here and here. So we're just cleaning that up. A lot of these are being changed from C4 to C3. And here's just a long list of all of the properties, but I'm just going to highlight a few of them. So self-storage would also become non-conforming. So we have self-storage. Looking through here, another self-storage down here. We have a check cashing business here. The car wash would become non-conforming. Another one here. And I think there's a check cashing somewhere in one of these two. There it is. So those are just some examples of the businesses that would become non-conforming. Otherwise, all the other businesses would still be conforming under the C3 zoning. And down at the bottom of the list here, I should point out that there are a few residential properties that are split zoned for whatever reason. They have a small sliver of commercial zoning on the residential property. So again, we're just cleaning that up. So with that, staff recommends approval subject to Common Council approval on November 16th.
Before anyone makes a recommendation, I just want to call out that Attorney Brad Dagan, sorry, Dagan is here this evening, and on that list of properties, Tony, he represents the owners of row 11 on the left side, so 1650 South 108th, Able Distributing. It's currently zoned, it's a mix, it's a split zone, C3 and light industrial M1. We are proposing to rezone that to C3, so there's some history with that property. And we can get into that in a second. But also on row 17, the 2535 108th, Menards has also submitted a letter to us indicating that they're concerned about removing the split zoning. Their property is actually three zones: a residential zone, a light industrial zone, and a commercial zone. We're recommending to consolidate that to a C4, as Tony indicated. So of all these properties, we have had some contact with property owners. There's been a couple notices that have gone out, and we have two that we know of right now that are opposed to the split zoning of their properties. So from Menard's case, they're concerned, and maybe, Tony, why don't we go back to maybe the map that shows the list of properties. So number 17 and 11, we can take a look at each of those. So 17 is Menards, so 108th being, and then you've got around them to the west, you've got the Autumn Glen Apartments, the RC1 area. And Menards, if you're familiar with that property, you've got a parking lot out in front, sort of fronting the Highway 100 area. And then you have behind that, part of their parking lot is also zoned light industrial. And then their store is kind of a mixture too. If you're in the garden area, or that part of the retail area is C4, another part of the building is light industrial, and then their lumber area behind that and sales display area is all light industrial. But they don't want us to rezone them. They want to stay split zone. Their concern is if they ever want to sell the property or do something different with the property, that it limits their opportunity to do so. They feel that they have better options with the split zoning than they do if it's zoned one way as C4. They're looking to, they've always wanted to expand that building, and make it something like what we've seen in other cities. Could they do that here? There was a proposal many years ago to sort of stack that building, tear it down, and rebuild it. A two-floor, like a kind of the state-of-the-art Menards, 2 stories, sort of a second-floor mezzanine, and then they were going to purchase site number 18 there, which is now self-storage. They're going to purchase that building and sort of wrap Menards around their lumber and outdoor display area around the back and combine it. All of that could take place in the C3 or C4 zoning district. Just to note, so while Menards has concern about removing the split zone, if they ever wanted to expand their operations here on Site 17, or if they were to expand into something else, they could do that within the C3 or C4 zoning. We do allow large box types of retail stores happen as a special use. So Menards is just, again, concerned about split zoning and what special use means, but they're currently operating under a special use. And then the other property, number 11, this is the Able Distributing Building. Mr. Dagan is here representing them. He's asked to speak this evening if so allowed, but he's representing his client's interest at that property.
Yeah, I'd be willing to give him a few minutes if he wants to address that.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Just by way of background, I'm Brad Dagan. I'm an attorney, and I've represented the ownership group for about 6 years now that bought this lot. I'm not sure if any of you remember, but when my clients bought that property, it was a giant black warehouse, and just the front facade was like just a giant concrete block wall. 5 years ago, there was an effort to rezone the entire property to C3. I think one of the things that we brought up and talked about at that time was the fact that this is a pretty unique property, that the building takes up most of the parcel in question, and that changing the entire lot to C3 would require ultimately that part of the property be torn down, which I argued back then could be inverse condemnation, but that's really not my goal today. I think what I want to emphasize today is that 5 years have gone by and my clients have completely renovated the building, front, middle, and back. And the front is Able Plumbing, and I don't know if anybody has been by there, but I think they've already met the long-term planning and use goals for this property. C3 is 25,000 square feet, and it's the front third or so of the property, and the back is about 38,000 square feet. This size building, also because it's uniquely situated on the lot and takes up most of the lot, is really ideal to attract a national company like Able and bring them to this community and have them there for this long and successfully operate both the retail and commercial division. And so they need a building that size to function. And my clients were fortunate enough, and they're kind of a sophisticated blend of real estate developers and my primary client's a contractor, and so they were able to combine their resources and go out and find Able as a tenant, and they've been very successful there. They have a nice showroom up front, a spectacular view from the street. They've got a design center, so it appeals both to retail and commercial use. But then in the warehouse portion in the back, they're also able to distribute throughout southeastern Wisconsin, and this is their primary hub in this area. So I think it's a really unique property. I think they've also matched the goals of the long-term plan by the way they've remodeled it and the front facade of the building. Frankly, I understand the concern about split zoning, but in this case, it's so unique that split zoning works. I've seen it work before. I represent a lot of developers, and sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. I'm not going to talk about Menards. That sounds a little bit different than what we have, because my clients really worked hard to get this tenant in there, and because in order to attract a national company like this that's very solid, a national player, you've got to have a big building like this, and you've got to be able to have the resources to remodel and renovate it just as my clients have. Now, if you change that zoning to 100% C3, ultimately, they're going to be forced to tear down almost half of the building, we figured. And I think that's the same argument I made 5 years ago, and I came out on my hands and knees and said, please don't make this all C3. And we went back and forth, and so I had some really good conversation with staff and the council, and I think even the mayor. We talked a bit. But ultimately, I think you see the result of that effort today. They've been there for 5 years. It's going strong. Very solid tenant. They're already talking to us about renewing the lease. A nationally known company. And presenting...
Attorney Dagan, if I could just,
Go ahead.
I think you misinterpreted. If they're there, they're going to be allowed to stay. It would just be...
No, I understand that, but what my concern is that, let's say Able moves and decides they need a bigger space someday.
Okay.
And if we can't find anybody within 12 months, then we're in trouble, and we can't use the same space, and then it's a specific use for Able. So I don't want to have to come back here and argue with the city and go, well, this new company is still a national company. They're a lot like Able, but I'm worried we're going to get shot down. And so that was one of the big concerns I raised back then, is that we agreed, and the city was gracious enough to accept the proposal to have C3 up front and the M1 in the back, so that the long-term use of this property and the investment my clients had made would be respected, and they would not have to worry about that 12-month window. I have had clients take longer than 12 months to find tenants of this.
But this wouldn't result in tearing half the building down. This,
Well,
if it were a new tenant within over a year, then it would be. I mean, there's more than just one step than what we're talking about tonight. It's two or
I
three.
understand that, but if it's all zone C3, there's a big danger of us not being able to use the building and being forced to tear it down because of the C3 zoning. Not all of it, just part of it. But that would kill a lot of the tax base and certainly destroy my client's investment into this property, because as I mentioned, they've renovated the whole building, front, middle, and back, and particularly paid a great deal of attention to the front, because that was part of the promise that was made to the city, is that we're going to make this a standout showpiece type gem. We attracted Able to it, and Able has done a great job with their use of the property, and they're very happy there. They want to stay there. So I'm not immediately worried about the future, but changing the zoning does raise the specter in the back of my client's mind. At some point in time, there might be a problem where it would have to be torn down. And what I think we're asking you to do is to sort of look back and examine those arguments we brought up before, that about the use of this property, the unique size of the building on the lot. Frankly, the fact that this split zoning has worked for this property and has worked very well, and I think can work for the long-term benefit of the city if it's maintained. And there is no rule that says you can't have split zoning, and I understand that we don't want too much of the split zoning without any rational basis for it. But I think here's a case where the split zoning makes sense, it's worked, and we're going to ask you to maintain it as such, because the potential for the long term to the investment of my clients and their ability to attract new tenants is threatened if it's all C3. So I wrote a letter. I'm not sure if everybody has seen that, but that was kind of reiterating some of the arguments that we brought up 5 years ago, and demonstrating how my clients have renovated the building and I think matched the long-term plan and the long-term goal for the corridor along 108th Street. And the facade of that building is, I think, exactly what you're looking for in the use. The retail and the design center and the office space that they've built really matches the goal. So just because the back is warehouse, I think it's important to recognize that that is what is attractive to these national companies. And if that zoning changes and there's not approved, or it's the potential for changing the use of the back half of the property, Able could move. They might not like a change in zoning. So I think there's a legitimate concern on the part of my clients that I think would be echoed by the tenant. And so we're asking you to take this property out of your proposed change for those reasons, and I think for the reasons that I stated in my letter, that the long-term use of this property matches the city's goals, and I think if anybody who looks at that property would see what they've done to it and how they've kind of made it look. So I'm going to quit rambling, but thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks for the explanation.
Question.
Yeah.
So we want to change it to C3. If we changed it to C4, would they be permitted?
They'd still be in the same situation, given the warehousing and so on, so the distribution aspect of it. Whereas the Menard site is, I guess we see that as a retail setting, whereas the Able Kohler, it does have a retail front end of the building, but then the back end is purely distribution and some of that. So that area, number 11, 108th and Mitchell, is somewhat unique. You have a lighter industrial area behind it, with that of Amalga, and there's some other businesses back there that that are clearly light manufacturing. And it was one of the things when we looked at the Highway 100 study. When we're working with the consultants there, they did look at that, and split zoning is something that is addressed, and identified within the Highway 100 report as being, it is something that happens in this situation along our corridor and within our city. It can be addressed. I think what Attorney Dagan brings up is that it is nice to have that showroom frontage facing the commercial Highway 100 aspect. There may be a different approach that we can take too from a zoning measure. A little bit longer term as we work towards updating our zoning ordinance, maybe creating another zoning district that's somewhat of a hybrid between commercial and light industrial, like flex, that we could take a look at. That was discussed in our Highway 100 study report. So those are all things we are going to take into consideration as part of this. We are recommending, rezoning to C3, but then again, this does need to go before the Common Council on the 16th. And Council, just like the Planning Commission, if you see fit, you could certainly take this out of the equation if you wish, or you could leave it in. But it's a decision ultimately the council's going to have to make. Do they want to keep this property in, as we're recommending, to rezone it to C3 to commercial, or you could take it out and it wouldn't affect everything else, and we wouldn't have to go through another hearing process. You can take things off the list to be rezoned, but if you start adding other stuff, then we have to go back and republish. So
that would be the job of the Common Council to...
Ultimately, yeah. Plan Commission here is advisory in this whole thing. So, you can advise the council what you think, if you think it should stay as we've recommended, or if you want to take certain things out, you could do that as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. In spite of the passionate case made by counsel, and I respect his comments, I would move approval of the Planning Department's recommendation on rezoning.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Bless you. Ayes have it, motion carries. All right. And next up, we'll have item 12.
Thank you, Mayor. This next item is for Reunion Restaurant. They are, Chris Paul is here representing Reunion. They're proposing, they would like a sign plan appeal for a rooftop sign that they have. They did receive their special use permit for their restaurant, which I believe is not quite open yet, but they received their special use in October of 2019. They did install their roof sign, and it requires a sign appeal. Here's a look at their sign. Similar to the Allstate sign that you might recall from last month. So it doesn't quite meet the code. So sign code says a wall sign may be allowed on a roof surface only if the roof surface is within 25 degrees of vertical, such as a mansard roof. So the proposed sign does meet our square footage requirement, but since it's and it's within the roof line, but since it's on a roof, that's why we require the sign appeal. So precedent has been set with the properties. Waterstone Bank is one of those, and as you all know, Allstate, as of last month, is another one of those precedents. Staff again believes that this wall sign is not objectionable, so we recommend approval.
I'd move approval. I think the rationale put forth by staff is logical and clear, and I'd move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'd approve the next one as well. It
Ayes
looks
have
like
it.
a really neat
Carries.
sign.
Yes, and this one I don't think I'll take out too long either, but
Move approval.
yeah, we'll go through this briefly, I guess. I'll keep it
I want
short.
to see the sign.
The sign is pretty cool, yeah. So this is for Perspective Brewing, which is right across the street from City Hall. This is going to be a restaurant and brewery where they're going to brew their own craft drinks there. Seems like a cool idea. Their idea with this sign is to pay homage to some of these ghost signs that you see throughout Milwaukee. This one right here is in West Dallas. This is on, I think it's 68th and Lincoln, yeah. It's a cool seal test ice cream sign that's kind of from the past and is still sticking around. So here's their proposed sign. This does not meet our sign code because it's larger than the proposed area and is painted directly onto the wall. But staff's going to recommend approval. We think this is sized well. There's this kind of, you can see this kind of cut out in the brick that's designed into the facade. This is designed to fit right into that. And it's kind of this tasteful design. It fits the context of the building and the neighborhood. And so we recommend approval.
Don't oversell it. You've already sold.
I know, it's pretty nice now.
Yeah, save your chips. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Item 14.
Sorry, who seconded that one?
I don't know. Who seconded it? Somebody sure.
wants to second?
Okay.
Everybody did.
I did.
And we're adjourned, right, Mr. Mayor?
We have item 14.
All right, so if you recall, last month you all asked for a schedule from the Lifeway Church for their extension of time. So Andrew McLean, the head pastor there, he did provide that in this screenshot I took of his email. So they'll be installing everything that they promised us throughout the span of next year, starting in June and finishing with the plantings in October of next year.
Does this meet your requirements?
Yes, it meets our requirements for the extension of time that we granted them.
And what should we be doing?
You don't have to vote on it. I'm just showing
acknowledge
you.
it.
Acknowledge it. Yes.
Nod and smile.
We'll do both.
All right.
So do you move to acknowledge it then?
And then one more.
No, it can't be anymore.
So
December 8th.
that's your preference.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't meet December 1st or December 8th.
I'm out of town December 1st.
We also prefer December 8th.
Yeah, December 8th would be fine.
Thank you.
I got to give my dog her heart medicine that night. I'm sorry. All right, now we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll move. Sure.
Right. Does anybody want to second the motion to adjourn?
I misspoke. I got a conflict. Can we do
On the
December
8th?
1st?
Oh, no.
I don't think I have a problem with either, but some people.
I can't.
I will be out of town December.
It'll depend on quorum, I guess. Maybe we'll have to do a doodle poll and just see who's available to make sure we have a quorum.
I mean, the first will work for me as well. I'm good for either date.
Okay. All in favor of adjourned?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Yay.